Greetings, students. Back from a long spring break. Here is Mr. Winter. I am going to share you our first lesson over the break here. It's Trig Basics Lesson 6. We're going to talk about triangle area. Now, the first thing I know you're saying is, I know how to find areas of triangles. We did it in geometry. No, you didn't. What you learned in geometry was a really nice little formula here that says area of a triangle is 1/2 base times the height, where the height and the base both meet to form right angles. Works great if you know the measure of the base and the height. If you don't. So in this specific instance right here, I'm looking at this and I have 3 bases to choose from. I could choose this base B, this A is a base, this is a base. Problem is, none of them have a height or a 90-degree angle that a side with a 90-degree angle that connects it. So what do? Well, I'll show you what we do. We're going to start just with the plain basic formula we've got. So I know that the area is 1/2 base times height. Now, for our sakes, I'm just going to call my base B this side right here. You could have used any of the 3 sides. It wouldn't have mattered. As you'll see, I'm going to come up with 3 different formulas to do this. Now, to find the height, well, I don't have it. I don't have a 90-degree or a right angle connecting one of the angles to that side. So I'm going to draw an altitude or a height right here. Now I have a base B and a height. Problem, however, is that while I might know what side B is, I don't know what that H or that altitude is. So I'm going to use a little trig to find it. I'm going to start using this angle A right here. If I were to take the sine of angle A, that would give me an opposite H over a hypotenuse C. And then to isolate H, I'd simply multiply both sides by C. So I'd get my height is C times the sine of A. So here, when I say 1/2 base times height, the height we just found can be found by replacing H with C times sine A. So in other words, if I'm given a triangle with no right angles, I make a right angle, I make an altitude, and I can come up with a formula similar to this. Now notice something. Since I chose angle A for my sine, the other 2 sides I use are the B and the C. So in other words, this formula works great when you're given side, angle, side, or in other words, when I'm given 2 sides and the angle in between. Let's continue. So here's the first formula that I just gave you. I can find area of triangle by taking 1/2 BC sine A. If I would have drawn an altitude to one of the other sides, I could have come up with 1/2 AC sine B. Or if I would have chosen a different side, 1/2 AB sine C. The thing about this formula that makes it easy to remember of is this. If I'm taking the sine of angle A, I take half of the other 2 sides, B and C, not A. If I'm using sine B, I take 1/2 of A and C. If I'm using sine C, I do 1/2 of the other sides, A and B, and I don't use C. So how does this all work? Here you go. Here's first example. I take, and again, I'm given 2 sides and an angle between it, so it's real simple. I know my area can be found by taking 1/2 of one of the sides times the other side times the sine of the angle between the two sides. So let's break out a little calculator here, and if I take half times 8, which is 4, times 13, times sine of 130, I get a triangle area of about 39.83 units or centimeters, I guess, squared. Easy as that. Okay, so let's try this one. What happens here if I'm given a triangle like this? Say I've got a triangle, let me just label it here as A, B, and C, where A is 43 degrees. Little a, which is a side across from it, is 10 inches. And little b is 8. Here, I'm given two sides, and the angle I'm given is not the one in between. So in order to use that formula, I need angle C. So what do? I use the law of sines. So I know that the sine of angle A is 43, sine of 43, over side A, which is 10. And then I can find sine of B over 8. So then I cross multiply, and I get sine of B times 10 is 8 times sine 43. I divide both sides by 10, and that's going to give me that I have sine of B equals, well, whatever this mess is. So let me go ahead and compute that. So I'm going to take 8 times sine 43, and then I'm going to divide that by 10. That gives me about 0.5455 or 0.5456, which is an estimated value. So then to find angle B, I just take the inverse sine of that. So I'm going to go sine inverse of that. And when I do that, I'm going to get an angle of about 33.065, or I'm going to call it 33. Forgive me, just got a new toy here. I'm playing with it. So 33.07 degrees. Now again, that's angle B right here. I need angle C. So I'm going to go ahead and let me clear out some of this to give us some writing space here. So then, since I know those two angles, angle A and angle B, I can find angle C really simple by just adding them and subtracting from 180. So if I take 43 plus 33.07, that gives me 76.07. I subtract that from 180, and I've got that angle C is 103.93 degrees. Now what I have is a side, another side, and the angle in between. So I can use my formula, area equals 1/2 AB sine C, or 1/2 10 times 8 times sine 103.93, and let's see what that looks like. So 1/2 times 10 is 5 times 8 is 40, and then times sine 103.93 gives me an area of approximately 38.82, and our units would be inches squared. That's the basic idea. I hope this helps. I'll give you another video tomorrow on how to deal with it if you're given all three sides, but for now, that's a good start. Thanks.